What is in store for the 2026 real estate market along the Florida Gulf Coast? Is it boom? Is it bust? Or is it more stabilization? Folks, that is what we're going to talk about today. My name is Brant. I'm a real estate agent right here along the Florida Panhandle, but I do have a pretty unique situation. I'm strictly a buyer's agent. I rarely ever do a listing. Even during the post-pandemic boom, when houses were sitting on the market for like 2 hours and then they'd get 97 offers, I was still a buyer's agent. So I've always been a buyer's agent. And I feel like when you specialize in one thing, you can do a lot better job. Now, another thing that's interesting about me is I get just about all my leads from a fishing YouTube channel. I have a fishing YouTube channel with over 300,000 subscribers. I travel around and showcase Florida in a positive light and all the fun things that you can do on the water. And most of my leads come from that YouTube channel. And most of the deals that I do, I would say right at 95% are out-of-towners moving here to the Florida Gulf Coast. And so if that's you, hopefully I can bring you some valuable information here. Now that you know a little bit about me, let's jump into the market. I want to touch on the 2025 market, then we'll jump into 2026. What we've seen is a major transition from the sharp appreciation phase post-pandemic to more of a balanced landscape. By the way, it is an absolutely beautiful day here in October. Not a cloud in the sky, 70 degrees, absolutely gorgeous. And what I mean by balanced landscape is everything is slowing, all right? Post-pandemic, for like 3 years, it was chaos. And we've seen a slowing, okay? And so, which is much needed. Homes that were sitting on the market for, a couple days are now sitting on the market for months. And we're seeing a lot of unique things happen in the market, like agents getting fired. We're seeing a lot of sellers overprice their homes. And what I mean by agents getting fired is there'll be, an agent will take on a listing and that listing will sit on the market for 100 days. Then it'll go off the market, come back on the market with a totally different agent. So basically the seller is blaming the agent for their home not selling. Problem is, it's really the market's fault right now. This market is a very tough market to sell your house in. I got 3 different calls this week from home sellers, and I don't know why they're calling me, because their home was already listed on the market and they already have a real estate agent, but they're like, Brant, man, I watch your videos on YouTube and I'm wondering, why is our house not selling? Like, listen, man. The market is very tough for a seller right now. And so it's funny, in these markets, we do see a lot of stuff like agents getting fired, sellers yanking their house off the market, putting it right back on the market as if we can't see that it just sat on the market for 90 days. And so there's a lot of that going on at the moment. Now, what does this mean if you're a home buyer? Well, it means that buyers have choices. It opens the door. First of all, and what I mean by choices, it gives you time. All right, you don't have to rush to try to find a home. You can sit back and find your dream home. It gives you time. It also opens the door for more contingencies. All right, there are multiple contingencies right now that I would use during a deal if I was a buyer or an out-of-town buyer. I would never do a deal right now without an appraisal contingency. Here's the reason why. And you might say, well, the bank's going to do an appraisal. Well, listen. You want to protect yourself at the moment from sellers that think their house is worth more than it really is. Yes, while a bank is going to do an appraisal and they're not going to give you the loan unless it appraises, well, what if you put a couple $100,000 down, or what if you are paying cash? There's a lot of different scenarios where the bank's appraisal is going to be irrelevant. So you want to put that appraisal contingency up front here in Florida, because here's what can happen. I'm going to give you an example of a deal that I did 2 weeks ago, okay? First time home buyer. I said, listen, before we even got into the deal, I was like, this house is overpriced. And I said, let's put in an appraisal contingency and let's offer this amount. Well, they rejected our offer and they came back and they said, we'll accept your appraisal contingency. Let's let the appraisal determine the value of the property. The agent was certain that the property was going to appraise. I wasn't. I couldn't find comps. I told my buyer, I said, look, they want to let the appraisal determine the price of the property. He said, fine, let's do it. Fast forward 3.5 weeks, we get the appraisal back. Sure enough, the home didn't appraise. So I sent the appraisal to the listing agent, and sure enough, we ended up getting a price reduction of almost $11,000. And this was a lot for this particular house. And why we got the price reduction is because, when you have a low appraisal, you have several options. The buyer can back out of the deal. No harm. Back out of the deal, not going to lose their earnest money deposit, or the seller can come down to the appraised value. Well, in this case, the buyer said, hey, we're backing out of the deal unless you come down to the appraised value. Well, that's what he did. He had no choice. Or either put his house back on the market and get another low appraisal and waste a lot of time, and so he came down to that appraised value. So make sure that that's the first contingency that I would always put in, especially right now. Sellers are going to accept it. They have to. And there's also a lot of sellers out there that think their home is worth way more than what it really is, which is one reason I'm a buyer's agent. All right, I've got so many different little business ventures going. I don't have time to argue with a seller about what their home is worth. All right, that is draining. That takes a lot of energy from me. Not something I'm going to do. All right, so then another contingency is a for sale of buyer's property contingency. This is what you're going to use if you live out of town, you want to move down here, and you need to sell your house first. I do this all the time. This would have never worked 2 years ago. All right, but it's working right now. This contingency basically says that, hey, we found our dream home and we want to lock this up. We have to sell our house first. So it basically states that, hey, buyer has to sell their property at XXX address in order to move forward and purchase this house. And if they can't sell the property during a certain amount of time, then they get to back out of the deal free and clear, no earnest money lost. So it is an option for a buyer if you want to try and lock up your dream home in a tough seller's market. Because hey, a lot of these sellers are like, yeah, let's do it. Our house is set for 120 days, no offer, let's do it. So it's been working for me. It's worked on quite a few deals this year. This market also gives buyers a lot more negotiating power, which is something they haven't had in the past. And so we're also seeing a lot of deals where straight up front, a seller's like, hey, we have to sell. We're going to accept your offer, even though it was quite a bit lower than the list price. But what's interesting about that is we aren't seeing the drastic list price changes. We're just seeing sale price changes. And so what that means is what the house originally listed for isn't exactly what it's going to sell for. And so I feel like a lot of sellers are still stuck in 2022, 23. They put this crazy list price on, it sits for 100 days, nothing doesn't move, and somebody makes a reasonable offer, and hey, the house sells, and the buyer may get that house for 20 or 30 or 40,000 cheaper than the original list price. Which brings me to my next point. Make sure you're protected from that list price. And what I mean by that, just because you see a list price, that doesn't mean that's the value of the house. You got to make sure you're protected from that list price, because most of these list price right now are fake news. All right, so you want your agent to send you a detailed pricing report, and you want to also do your own research and your own due diligence. Just because you find your dream home and you absolutely love a property doesn't necessarily mean it's worth what they're asking for it. And so be very careful about that in this market. These homes are overpriced. A lot of them are. And I'm not saying all of them. There are some honest sellers out there that need to sell, that need to get rid of their home. There's a lot of sellers that pretty difficult to work with right now. So just be mindful of that if you are planning on moving down here. Let's quickly jump into 2026. We just had our big end of the year brokerage meeting down here, and all the data that we went over points to continued stabilization. It doesn't point to a crazy boom or a crazy bust, at least for the first 6 months of 2026. I think we're going to see more of what we're seeing right now. We may see some modest price gains. I don't know. I think we're going to. I think it's going to kind of sit and do what it's doing right now. So I do think you as a buyer have time, at least for the first half of 2026, to kind of sit back and pick the house that you want and move forward. And that's at least what we're seeing here on the panhandle of Florida. And I say the panhandle because not every Florida market is the same. I get so many buyers and they're like, hey man, I just saw this about the Florida market. Well, I'm like, which Florida market? Because they're, not every market's the same, guys. A coastal market is going to be different than an inland market. Where you're at geographically makes a huge difference. So just know that if you're a buyer and want to purchase a property here in Florida, you need to make sure and do research on that specific area and not just listen to the state of Florida as a whole. When I talk to you guys, I'm talking about my area here on the panhandle. Okay, I'm not talking about Southwest Florida. I'm not talking about, Miami. I'm talking about here. What was that? There you go. Look like a snake. So that'll do it, folks. That's it. And if you have any questions about the Florida Gulf Coast, hit me up. All my information is linked in the description below. I'll be more than happy to answer questions. Text and email is the easiest way to get a hold of me, which that information is linked below. So if moving here is something that you're planning to do in the near future, hit me up. We can at least do a free phone consultation, and so that I can get a better idea of what you're doing, what your game plan is, and hey, we can move forward and hopefully find you an awesome place to live. So if you like that video, shoot me a thumbs up. We'll catch you next time.